These are two words that can cost Medicare beneficiaries thousands of dollars and change your entire medical experience. Observation status versus admitted. What sounds like simple hospital paperwork is actually a billing designation that has quietly become one of Medicare's most expensive traps, with some seniors facing bills of over $22,000. You walk into a hospital emergency room. You are sick, maybe confused, experiencing severe symptoms. The doctors run tests, start an IV, give you medications, and move you to a hospital bed where you stay overnight, maybe even for several days. You are getting the same care as any other hospital patient. You are in the same beds, eating the same food, seeing the same nurses. But here is what you might not know until it is too late. You may not actually be admitted to the hospital at all. Instead, you could be classified under something called observation status, which Medicare considers outpatient care. This single-word difference, this bureaucratic designation that happens behind the scenes while you are focused on getting better, can cost you tens of thousands of dollars. It is essentially Medicare's observation status trap that catches patients when they are most vulnerable. The numbers tell a shocking story. Between 2006 and 2014, the number of patients placed under observation status doubled. By 2014, more than 633,000 Medicare beneficiaries found themselves trapped in observation status for hospital stays that lasted 3 days or longer. Some patients stayed in observation for as long as 14 days, receiving intensive medical care, yet still classified as outpatients who never technically entered the hospital. To understand how we got here, we need to go back to 1965, when Medicare was created with a simple rule. If you need skilled nursing care after a hospital stay, Medicare will cover it, but only if you spent at least 3 consecutive days admitted as an inpatient. This became known as the 3 midnight rule for skilled nursing facility qualification. This seemed reasonable at the time. Hospital stays typically lasted longer, and the distinction between inpatient and outpatient care was clearer. Observation status was originally designed as a brief assessment period, typically less than 24 hours, rarely more than 48, to help doctors decide whether a patient needed formal admission or could be safely discharged. It was meant to be a halfway point, as one health researcher described it, between the emergency room and full hospital admission. But starting in 2005, everything began to change. Medicare introduced recovery audit contractors, essentially bounty hunters, who combed through hospital billing records looking for improper payments. These Medicare administrative contractors work with hospitals to process claims, but they also audit for compliance. Hospitals that admitted patients who Medicare later determined did not meet inpatient criteria faced significant financial penalties. The pressure was enormous. Hospitals could admit too readily and face audits, penalties, and accusations of Medicare fraud. Then came the 2 midnight rule in 2013. Medicare established that if a patient was not expected to need hospital care spanning at least 2 midnights, they should not be admitted as an inpatient. While this rule was meant to provide clarity, it often had the opposite effect. Hospitals, terrified of penalties, began defaulting to observation status even for seriously ill patients. The financial incentives became twisted. In 2012, Medicare was paying hospitals an average of $5,142 for short inpatient stays, but only $1,741 for observation visits involving similar care. Yet hospitals chose the lower reimbursement to avoid the risk of much larger penalties from readmission fees and audit recoveries. Dr. Ann Sheehy, a hospital medicine expert who became a key witness in the legal battle over observation status, documented how hospitals were gaming the system. Patients receiving identical care, same tests, same treatments, same length of stay, were being classified differently based purely on billing strategy, not medical need. The human cost became devastating. Take Sarah Mulcahy, age 96, who spent 5 days in the hospital receiving intravenous medications and multiple tests for severe pain. She was then transferred to a skilled nursing facility for 3 months of rehabilitation. Because her hospital stay was classified as observation, Medicare covered none of her nursing home care. Or consider Gladys from Minnesota, who suffered compression fractures in a fall and spent 4 days under observation status before moving to a skilled nursing facility. Her frail husband, already on a limited income, was stuck with a bill for $10,551, money they simply did not have. The Medicare Rights Center began receiving calls like one from a man whose spouse had been hospitalized under observation status, moved to a skilled nursing facility, and upon discharge was presented with a bill for $16,000. These weren't unusual cases. They were becoming the norm. The financial trap is brutal in its simplicity. If you are classified as an inpatient for 3 days and then need skilled nursing care, Medicare Part A covers up to 100 days, with the first 20 days completely free. But if you spend 2 weeks in a hospital under observation status, those days count for nothing under the 3 midnight rule. You are responsible for the full cost of nursing home care, an average of $302 per day for a shared room in 2025. Do the math on a typical 20-day nursing home stay. $0 if you qualify through proper inpatient status. $6,040 if you do not. For longer stays, the numbers become life-altering. Mrs. J, whose story emerged in recent court documents, faced over $22,000 in skilled nursing costs after her hospital reclassified her from inpatient to observation status. It is worth noting that Medicare supplement insurance, also known as Medigap, can provide some protection against these observation status costs, though coverage varies by plan, but the costs do not stop at nursing home care. Under observation status, Medicare Part B does not cover many routine medications that patients normally take for conditions like diabetes, high blood pressure, or high cholesterol. Hospitals often charge steep prices for even generic drugs, leaving patients with medication bills in the hundreds of dollars. The system's absurdity reaches its peak when you consider that patients can receive identical care yet face vastly different financial consequences based on a billing code they are never told about. The Department of Health and Human Services Inspector General found that the care provided to patients, whether classified as inpatient or outpatient, is similar, and that the most common reasons for short inpatient stays were similar to the most common reasons for short outpatient stays. Hospitals fought back against criticism by pointing to Medicare's own rules and the financial penalties they faced for inappropriate admissions. The Hospital Readmissions Reduction Program penalized 78% of hospitals in 2015, with total penalties reaching $428 million. Hospitals argued they were simply following Medicare's guidelines and protecting themselves from financial ruin. Recognition of the problem led to some reforms. In 2017, hospitals became required to provide patients with a Medicare outpatient observation notice within 36 hours if they are under observation for 24 hours. But critics argued this was too little, too late. Patients were being informed of their status when they were least able to do anything about it. The real breakthrough came through the courts. In 2011, two nonprofit legal organizations, the Center for Medicare Advocacy and Justice in Aging, along with the law firm Wilson Sonsini Goodrich and Rosati, filed a federal lawsuit called Alexander versus Azar. They argued that patients who were initially admitted as inpatients but then reclassified to observation status were being denied due process rights. After years of legal battles, Judge Michael Shea ruled in 2020 that these patients did indeed have the right to appeal their status change. The decision was upheld on appeal in 2022, and in October 2024, Medicare finally implemented the appeals process. Starting in February 2025, patients whose status was changed from inpatient to observation during their stay can now appeal that decision through the Beneficiary and Family-Centered Care Quality Improvement Organization, spelled BFCCQIO. What is more important, anyone affected by such a status change going back to 2009 can file a retrospective appeal, but they have only until January 2, 2026 to do so. Patients will need their Medicare Summary Notice, spelled MSN, and hospital records to document their appeal. Alice Burrs from the Center for Medicare Advocacy captured the significance. She said, The ruling acknowledges that Medicare patients are in a very vulnerable position when they are hospitalized, and particularly when they require care at a skilled nursing facility after hospitalization. We are heartened that the court recognized that the ability to appeal the observation status issue to Medicare is a question of fundamental fairness. The fight isn't over. Congressional legislation called the Improving Access to Medicare Coverage Act would count observation time toward the 3-day requirement, but it faces uncertain prospects. Meanwhile, over 70% of Medicare beneficiaries in Medicare Advantage plans already have access to skilled nursing benefits without the 3-day requirement, creating a two-tiered system where traditional Medicare beneficiaries face restrictions that most others do not. What makes this story particularly striking is how a bureaucratic billing designation became a trap that cost patients billions of dollars while they were at their most vulnerable. 2 words, observation versus admitted, became the difference between financial security and catastrophic medical debt, between getting the care you need and going without. For anyone entering a hospital, the lesson is clear. Ask about your status, understand the implications, and know your rights. In healthcare's complex billing world, the words that describe your care can matter just as much as the care itself.